I first got involved with sexual health work around gay men in 1987. I worked on a gay switchboard in Lancaster and became involved in setting up the Lancaster AIDS line. That was while I was at university, studying to be a social worker. I moved off into the West Midlands, started doing social work and became aware that social workers, carers weren't aware of caring for people with HIV, and I got involved in social services, training people around that, became an HIV coordinator. And then I ended up in Manchester working for Trafford Social Care as their HIV coordinator and HIV social worker. And it was while I was there, in around about 1992, that I identified some money that I wanted Trafford to spend on gay men's work in the village. What was the village then? And I approached MESMAC, Men Who Have Sex with Men Action in the Community, who had an organisation in Manchester, to see whether they would do the piece of work, so I can commission them to do a piece of work with that £5,000. And that's where I met Paul Martin. Paul Martin would become, and is actually now the CEO of LGBT Foundation. In those days he worked for MESMAC, and within about 3 months, I think, I became chair of MESMAC. So I got involved with it. I was wanting to be involved with doing something on the preventative side because I was a social worker working with people who were ill, who were in need. And that was a pretty negative space to be in. And I wanted to be doing something positive about this. And that's why I got involved with it. MESMAC was a traditional, if there was such a thing as a traditional gay men's health approach in those days. Manchester ran it, it wasn't part of the national MESMAC organisation. And I started to feel that the work that MESMAC was doing was constrained. It was constrained by the politics, the funding, just the general approach of it, and more importantly, the health promotion approach did not seem to be taking into account the needs of gay men, in the sense of the health promotion approach at that time was very much focused around, it's all about a transfer of body fluids. And it's a vector that you've got to stop. So it was simplistic. Stop doing that and you'll be all right. I think we all knew, and in retrospect, I think, intuitively we know, it isn't about an exchange of body fluids. It's actually a social interaction, sex. And the dynamics of that are very, very complex. And trying to take forward a simplistic approach around just saying no wasn't working. And it didn't feel comfortable, and it didn't feel like we were doing anything that was working. And Paul and I were at an HIV conference in Blackpool on a cool February sunny morning. We both bunked off the conference and walked down the beach. And we did some, what was literally blue sky thinking. We wondered, what would an organisation be if there weren't political constraints? If there weren't financial constraints? If there weren't legal constraints? If the businesses actually treated their customers as people they were interested in terms of their health? What would it be like? So we batted ideas backwards and forwards, and we decided that we would try and turn MESMAC into this new approach, which was essentially going to be sex positive. We were going to affirm the lives of gay men. Because I think even then we knew that gay lifestyles, gay men's lifestyles in particular at that time, there was no affirmation about them being positive in their lifestyles. All of it was negative. The right-wing media was negative. We had a chief constable who was telling us that we were swirling around in a cesspit. We knew that lots of men, and I knew from Switchboard, lots of people who phone up not confident about themselves, and therefore how were they going to take ownership of what they need to do to look after themselves if their lifestyles weren't affirmed and supported? And we felt that we had to go for it. We gave ourselves a year to put Health Again Manchester together. That was in February. We got back to the office to find out funding had changed, things were going to change by the end of March. So we had 6 weeks to make HGM work, and we did it.